Hey guys, it's Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. I am the owner and managing editor of the Maxfield Report, and this is our market recap for the week ending February the 6th. In the United States, the big Packer market started out with Packers exhibiting a few more hides for sale. That said, Packers continue not to yield on their asking prices in spite of widespread opinion that they have plenty of hides in their warehouses. Although Packers will insist that these are sold, and they're sold all the way through this month into next month. The issue, if you've been following me on this blog, is there's not enough containers, empty containers for them to load. So even though they're sold on paper, they've got some mounting inventories. That's providing some opportunities for those who have ability to either get containers or trucks, however they're getting them, beg, borrowing, or stealing. But if you can get them in there, you can get them loaded, you have the ability to negotiate some prices. So on the surface, Packers are going to tell you that the market in the United States is no worse than steady. I'll agree to that on heavy native steers because the automotive upholstery business remains pretty decent. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of butt branded steers for sale, a lot of branded steers, a lot of Colorado branded steers. The shoe trade really isn't following that activity that the automotive upholstery people are enjoying, and that's leading for some lower prices, although I don't think Packers would want to agree with me on that, but I think prices were off at least $1 on those items. So was interest last week, with a lot of tanners already on vacation, the rest of the tanners exiting the end of this week. There are still a few guys going to run 2-3 days next week, but Asia's out observing the new year. Interest was not as good as last week. Not that last week was great, but as expected, really wasn't a lot to choose from. Buyers continue to bid it down. As said, Packers continue to try to dig in, hold prices steady as they could. So end of the day, I don't think there's as many hides sold as last week. As far as prices, I'm going to call them steady to slightly lower. In the cowhide trade, little different tone in that market as it has been the past, 4 to 6 weeks. The cow guys continue to see enough interest to keep prices firm. If you have dairy cows, there's hardly any offered. People are willing to pay more for those, so they're doing okay. And so as far as offers on the surface, they were steady with last week. Those trying to get more money for anything but dairy cows did meet a bit of resistance. They can't push it any higher, but that said, they will not take any less for their hides. So interest, like big Packer hides, wasn't nearly as busy, with many people closing down for the new year. So overall, I don't think the producers sold as many hides as they produced this week. However, the prices were fully steady. As far as the knock last week, it came in at 653. That's the same number as the week before. It's 631 a year ago. So we're slowly digging away at that shortfall compared to last year. But last year includes a day and a half extra worth of slaughter. As we go forward, something to keep in mind as we're off about 188,000 head. We're going to catch that back up because the third week of April all the way until about early June, remember, the United States saw about 1 million less head harvested because of COVID. Plants couldn't run. They couldn't get people to work. They actually shut down. They had to do extra cleaning. They had to install partitions, etc. So we're going to catch that up. And in fact, if you held my hand over a fire right now, by the end of this year, I think we're going to be about 700,000-800,000 head higher than last year's total. So as far as the export report, a little better than expected. In fact, some people even say is a slightly bullish, which was a pleasant change. We hadn't seen that in several weeks. Net salted sales of 421,000. You had exports of 410,000 on wet salted. Wet blue sales 95,000. Exports 166,000 on the wet blue. So couple of highlights from that I want to share. The wet salted sales are 93,000 higher than last week, or 29%, led basically by the Chinese. They bought 129,000 more hides than the week prior. That's up 80%. So China was the driving factor in all of that. Excuse me. Shipments of wet salted hides were about 44,000 higher than last week. That's about 12%. Sales of wet blue were actually a little bit lower at 95,000. That's about 37,000 hides, or 28% lower. While wet blue shipments were a highlight, 166,000 hides, is the marketing year high, 25,000 better than last week, or 18%. Couple of numbers to keep in mind here. Combined sales of 800,000. That's 12% higher than last week. China accounted for about 62% of that. That's the second largest number of the year. I know it's only been 4 weeks, but not a bad number. And then shipments, that's the big number, 575,000. That's a marketing year high. And remember, we continue to hear about all these issues with shipments. I'm just wondering if maybe some shipments that didn't get reported from the week prior got spilled into this week. But overall, not a bad report. But the thing to keep in mind, 653,000 were knocked. None of those numbers come close to 600,000. So we continue that trend where we have more hides being produced than we're selling, than we're shipping. Let's go around the globe real quick. Our friends in Europe continue to cite that they're having decent interest, especially from Italian tanners. European tanners are also stepping up to the plate. They're able to get a little bit more money. Asian tanners, not as much interest. They're kind of fighting the tape, if you would, on these higher asking prices in Europe. But overall, prices did drift higher there. Their harvest numbers are going lower, so that's working in the favor of sellers who continue to enjoy decent sold forward positions. In Brazil, the NOC is down substantially. It's been down, running at levels that we haven't seen down there for I don't know how many years. That's allowed these sellers to push prices of wet blue hides higher, fresh hides higher. Although we are starting to see signs of some resistance building against these higher higher asking prices, I should say, excuse me. So it'll be interesting to see how the Brazilians maneuver through there, because it isn't as easy to sell and get more money every week. In Australia, the prices continue to go higher. That's because harvest levels there are running lower. Give you a comparison. In Australia, packers are losing between $200 and $300 a head, depending on what part of the country you're in. That's because live cattle prices are escalated. Beef demand's not that great. Here in the U.S., we have plenty of cattle. Packers are making $250, $300 a head, maybe even more than $300 a head. So just an inverse of this of what's going on in the two countries, which just seems mind-boggling how that would play out. But that's the situation. So with the lack of material in Australia for sale, these guys are able to hold prices. They're trying to push for higher prices. They are too starting to bump up against resistance on that. So as far as next week, Chinese New Year is in full swing. We want to wish all of our friends in Asia very happy lunar holidays. Just for a point of reference, we ourselves are going to be taking vacation, leaving next Thursday afternoon, so we won't do a blog here for a couple of weeks. But as far as what's going to happen, the COVID problems in China, they seem to be at least not worsening. Some people would even say they're starting to ease a little bit, so have to keep an eye on that. A lot of people talking about lockdowns will last at least through the Chinese New Year. The Chinese government's requiring negative tests in order to travel. That's certainly going to help there. In the U.S., we have states that are starting to ease restrictions. In fact, I live in a state where our mask restrictions are being lifted as of last night at midnight. That doesn't mean COVID's gone away, but that's certainly, in my opinion, going to at least a good sign towards maybe some better demand coming. However, with all these inventories in the States, the container problems continue. They're not getting better. In fact, they're worsening by the week. So until the container situation eases in the States, I think we're going to remain under pressure. So that's it for Ken Maxfield. No, you know me as the Hide Guy. Check out my website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. And just FYI, we're going to be doing a website upgrade release on February the 21st. So come check it out, see what's going on, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.